Good morning to everyone and welcome to the September 12th meeting of the Douglas County Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. My name is Pam Weegan. I'm the chair of the CJCC. This will be a hybrid meeting. I want to pass on some information regarding how we will conduct the meeting today. We ask that all members on Zoom, please turn on video if you have it. We ask that all members on Zoom mute their line when not speaking. We ask that you please identify yourself each time you speak. If you're on Zoom, have public comment to make during the public comment section of the agenda, please use the raise your hand function on Zoom. Recordings of CJCC meetings are available on the CJCC website after each meeting. Our first item is 2 behavioral health project updates, the NACO Familiar Faces Initiative with Bob Tryansky and the Harvard Kennedy School Government Performance Lab with Chief Lockhart. Chief Lockhart, do you want to start?
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Happy to be here with all of you. This is going to be a hybrid presentation too. So Bob will be doing his part on Zoom and I'll be doing my part here in person. So we've got 2 things for you today. One is our Familiar Faces program that we've started and already having some good results with that. And Bob will present that for us. Then I'll talk about the Harvard Kennedy School Government Performance Lab cohort project that we've just started. So Bob, why don't you kick it off?
Thanks, Chief, and apologies to everybody that I'm not there in person. We've learned sometimes with technology that it's better to be in the Zoom universe if you want to be presenting from the Zoom universe. So I'm going to start off with a little pivot to, I just want to make everybody aware of, we at the county are really excited about a partnership we've had with our behavioral health stakeholders and with public health in particular, and cooperation and support from Dr. Matt Cravens in his role as the senior analyst at here at Douglas County. We have released a new report, which is available from the Douglas County website right up here in the new window. And this report is a summary of some of the initiatives that we have launched in Douglas County over the last 5 years in conjunction with the Community Health Improvement Plan, our strategic plan to improve public health in Douglas County. One of the planks of that plan, as everyone knows, is the behavioral health plank. And so we are, right towards the final quarter of this 5-year plan. And so we've created a report that is now publicly available to help people in the community understand and see some of the progress that's being made. It's a publicly accessible report, not a web page, a digital report. Our hope is that we will periodically and with some regularity update the information in that report, but it's designed to be and provide kind of a window, and I'm going to click right here on this middle link, kind of a window into the wide variety of work that has been done by our behavioral health partners, our criminal justice partners, our human service providers to create a system of care and a community where we can move from crisis and illness as a norm to recovery and prevention as a practice. So what you have here, like I said, is I like to think of it as a window, and each project and each tab here is kind of a window pane into some of the initiatives that have been launched. So for example, if I click on prevention, because one of our priorities and focus groups in the strategic plan of the health plan is prevention, you can read about one of the initiatives that has been sparked by leadership in our municipal police departments and by the sheriff's department, a project that we've talked about before called Handle with Care. And so Handle with Care is a project where law enforcement, EMS, first responders, when they get on a scene, an incident where there is a young person involved, a school-aged young person involved, and the impact of that event that's happening in the community that results in a call might be the type of thing to trigger some trauma or a tough thing for a young person to process. Law enforcement partners now notify our school district partners in Lawrence, Baldwin, Eudora, Lecompton with what's called a Handle with Care message. And that's just a heads up to the school district and the school where that young person goes to school that this individual was involved in something that might require them to, handle them with care today, take a little bit more time with them, spend a little bit of time being more compassionate, a trauma-informed response to try to lessen the impact of some of the difficulties that young people experience when there's an emergency or they have law enforcement contact. So all of the prevention initiatives are available by clicking on the prevention tab. If we look at the integration tab, for example, there's a window into some of the work that we've done in working with justice involved individuals. So this includes, the work with drug court, with behavioral health court, with AOT, and our overall work to try to reduce the number of jail bookings with SMI individuals in the jail. Dr. Cravens has created a summary here that you can access. You can click on the tab within here and it will pull you straight up to the behavioral health dashboards. Again, just a simple tool to help you navigate, learn more about what we've done in Douglas County so far to create this integrated system of care. And then there are windows that help us to understand some of the new components, such as the Douglas County Crisis Line, the mobile response team, simple little windows to sort of see the impact, how you contact and connect with these things. So just again, you can access that from the county's webpage. Very simple. It's designed to be accessible to everybody and to help the community learn sort of how this integrated system of care works. I'm going to go back to my slide deck for a minute. It's really an interesting season here in Douglas County because when we started working together in 2016, 2017, our prime objective was to address the fact that when a person is in crisis in Douglas County, they too often found themselves in a progression here that had them winding up in the wrong place, not getting the care that they needed, the care that they deserved. If you call 911, police car is often dispatched or an ambulance is dispatched. And sometimes if you're in a community that's not open 24/7 for crisis, people wind up in the wrong place and they revolve around an open door. What's happened really since last July, when 988 and our Douglas County Crisis Line came on board, thanks to the leadership of KSPHQ, thanks to in September of last year, Bert Nash launched their mobile response team. In April of this year, the TRC came online and the TRC is now available 24/7. We now have a series of interventions that are available online and open for business 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second and turn this over to Robin. Robin has a video. We've been showing pictures with cartoons and a diagram about how this system is supposed to work. But the exciting thing is that we now have human beings and people who are exercising leadership to make these resources come online. And so, Robin, if you want to share the video, we can show you what this looks like in real life, in real time.
Bob, I don't see a Robin on the screen. Oh.
Just a moment, I'm working on it.
Judge McCavery, she is disguised as administration. Here we go.
I was told that after I decided to speak up and should have waited.
You can now access a system of care that will get you the help you need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. How do you access that system? You pick up the phone and you dial 988. You dial 841-2345 if you want to make sure that you talk to somebody local. And that call takes you to an air traffic control system that finds and connects you with exactly what you need. It might be a mobile response, so a mobile team that will come to you, try to figure out what's going on, figure out if there are resources, so we can keep you at home, we can keep you at the community. If things are really a little bit more escalated, then you turn to the treatment and recovery campus. And if you go to the treatment and recovery campus, you go to the TRC, you can just walk in 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and there will be behavioral health specialists, people who have experience with and knowledge about substance use and addiction, people that can keep you safe. All of those people are in the TRC 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And there are people there who are peers, people with lived experience. And those peers, they've been there And so they can walk alongside of you as you move through this very scary, very upsetting situation, so that you feel safe, that you feel like you're in good hands. That's what people want when they're in a crisis. They want to know they can turn to somebody and they know that they can trust them and that they're in good hands.
So big thanks to Robin for this technical hurdle. I promise you, if you were to watch this in the comfort of your own office, or if you'd like to share this when you're giving presentations or you're out talking to community members, it runs more smoothly than what looks like a Charlie Chaplin film. Despite our efforts to be as technically advanced as possible, we still are a little technically challenged. But the idea here, again, is just to start to celebrate the fact that we now have this integrated system of care that is accessible 24/7 and it's easily accessed. That being said, one of our challenges is this is a complex system and it has a lot of players working together in ways that they've never been challenged to work together before. And so the season that we're entering here is moving beyond celebrating the fact that we've brought these components online. It's how do we roll up our sleeves now and dive into the complexity of true integration between law enforcement, first responders, behavioral health providers, human services providers. This system is complex, and there are some questions and challenges that we face as we try to build a true integrated system of care that moves from crisis and illness to recovery and prevention. So some of those challenges are, how do we build a 24/7 behavioral health crisis system in a community of our size and in a state without Medicaid expansion? There are a lot of communities that are adding crisis centers to the mix, that are bringing mobile teams online. We are leading in this space in the state of Kansas, and it is very rare. Our kind of value proposition, if you want to call it that, is there are few communities of our size that are bringing on all of the components of this system in the way Douglas County has, in the way Douglas County voters have supported it. So we want to ensure that the result of that is that we make sure that individuals in crisis receive the right care in the right setting at the right time. And the right time means every time. So another level of complexity is finance and funding. How do we maximize outside funding sources? How do we foster transparency, accountability, and this continuous quality improvement, this commitment to getting better all the time, while we minimize competitions between agencies? One of our blessings of scale is that we have one hospital, we have one community mental health center, we have one federally qualified health center, we have one of everything. We need to make sure that our medical partners and our mental health partners and our substance use partners, that we can see each other continually, to see them as partners and not as competitors, because at the end of the day, we're trying to serve people who need help. We want to ask how we need to hold coalitions and emerging partnerships together, and how do we ensure financial discipline so that we're maximizing outside revenue sources and investing in the system so that we really truly do realize that return on investment and reduce our dependence on those costly emergency services. And then the last question, which is a question I think we're going to start to step into as a council, as a community, is how should county government effectively leverage its position as a convener, as a strategist, and as a funder to pull together behavioral health, justice system, and community stakeholders together? So how do we formalize crisis system oversight? You know, that involves county and municipal government. That involves our healthcare and human service providers, EMS, law enforcement, criminal justice partners, the courts, citizens with lived experience, community stakeholders. The work that's ahead of us here is to build on the learning we did by assembling our behavioral health partners through the Behavioral Health Leadership Coalition to bring these resources online. Our challenge now is to pull together the partners in this room along with those behavioral health partners so that we can really fine-tune and optimize this system. So what we want to focus on this morning is to share two initiatives in that regard. And the first is an initiative that we really got involved with through the National Association of Counties in 2017. It used to be called the Data-Driven Justice Initiative. Last year, it was relaunched as the Familiar Faces Initiative. And the idea of the Familiar Faces Initiative is, how do we improve outcomes through coordinated health and justice systems? So how do we work in the intersection of these two spaces to make sure that people who don't need to be in the criminal justice system are not there? How do we ensure that when people do contact the criminal justice system because they've got an underlying substance use or serious mental illness or behavioral health related issue, how do we help to deflect them away from further and deeper involvement in criminal justice? This is the work this is the work and the reason that a council like ours was convened. The Familiar Faces Initiative actually focuses on meeting that small subset of the population. In Douglas County, it's a small number of people. We know we have at least 400 individuals experiencing homelessness at any given time. Out of that 400 people, we have about 120 to 130 people every year who are responsible for over 700 emergency room visits. Small group of people, large impact on emergency resources. So, for years as we move through this process, there have been labels attached to this segment of the population, and labels were things like frequent flyers and loyalty customers. The Familiar Faces challenges us to pivot a little bit in the way that we talk about this and the way we think about this, because at the end of the day, familiar faces are people who have been failed by the system. And familiar faces are people who are not getting the results that the system ought to be able to deliver. And a lot of times that's because they're a person who struggles with chronic poverty. They are not safely and securely housed. They have underlying complex medical issues. It's not just mental illness, it's co-occurring substance use and mental illness. It's complex physical health conditions. It's issues related to aging and dementia and traumatic brain injuries. These are complex individuals, and so we need a complex strategy to address their needs. What we've been fortunate in Douglas County, thanks to the initiatives and leadership of Commissioner Reed and others, is to have participated for the last several years and been receiving technical assistance from the National Association of Counties and these partners to try to bring together some of the data sharing resources like My Resource Connection, which this council was instrumental in standing up and launching in Douglas County. How we bring that together with our police co-responder unit, and again, mobile, TRC, how do we do a better job to meet the needs of those familiar faces? So over the last couple of months, thanks to the initiative of Chief Lockhart to pull this group together, City of Lawrence, Douglas County, our emergency communications team, fire medical, and our behavioral health partners at KSPHQ, now called Headquarters Kansas, at Burt Nash, the Treatment and Recovery Center. All of us have started within the last 2 months, really, a local familiar faces initiative. And I'm going to turn it over to Chief Lockhart to share what the focus of that is and some of the progress we've made so far.
So one of the things that we know is we answer a lot of calls with the same number of people. So we identified those high users of police service, and then we went to this multidisciplinary team to talk about, are they high users in your areas as well? And so with the help of Dr. Cravens, we were able to pull together hospital visits with police calls, with jail stays, with all of this stuff, and develop a group that we started focusing our efforts on. One of our first people that we dealt with, he was the highest user of service, and he had only been here for 3 months. His dad lives in Kansas City North. He dropped him off in Lawrence. I don't know why. And within 3 months, this person was one of our highest users of service. As we started talking about him, he was at the TRC. We found out that he had a traumatic brain injury, that basically as a 30-something-year-old man, he's living with dementia. So he has real memory issues. He has some other underlying medical issues that help contribute to some of his problems with his brain functioning. And so we knew who he was. We had lots of notes and calls with him. Was not a criminal, was not anybody who needed to be in the criminal justice system. He's just a person that didn't know where he was and couldn't remember from day to day what was going on, couldn't take care of himself because of the medical issues. They got him stabilized at the TRC, and we called our first huddle together, is what we call them, when we all talk about someone and what we can do. And it was really, for me, it was probably one of the most satisfying things I've ever dealt with in my 33-year career. Is we had medical people, we had treatment people, we had police, and everybody gathered together to talk about this one person and how can we find a better outcome for him. And we had another huddle yesterday, and we talked about him again. And he's been through his level 1 and 2 screening, so he's qualified for care. But now the challenge is finding him a place to stay. Because, statewide, we don't have a lot of resources for folks in that state, but they're working on getting Medicaid in Kansas. He had Medicaid in Missouri. And so without the efforts of all of us together, I don't think we would have the outcome that we're hoping to have for this man. We've identified some other folks that we believe can be benefited from our concentrated efforts as well. One of the things we're talking about is bringing a peer on board with the co-responder and creating a successful intervention team. But also, all of us are sharing, what have we done with Rich Lockhart so far? What's worked? What hasn't worked? Who has a good rapport with him? And maybe we catch him on the right day at the right time to get him into some treatment. Because I didn't wake up today thinking, my goodness, I want to go to the emergency room in an ambulance, or my goodness, I want to get arrested by the police. I don't wake up every day thinking that. And that's the way a lot of these folks are. They've got substance use disorders, they've got mental health issues that are not medicated. And so how can we as a multidisciplinary team work on making a better outcome for them? And I'm super excited about this. It's great work. And I think that it's just a credit to how well all of these agencies that Bob mentioned on the previous slide work together. And when we all bring our superpowers together, how much better we can create these outcomes for folks that are just human beings that just want to live a life like everyone else. On top of that, we just were approved for a really exciting thing. It's through the Harvard Kennedy School's Government Performance Lab. We were identified as one of 14 cohorts in the country from about 40 applications. It was a competitive application process. And what this will mean for us, it's a program called Alternatives to 911 Emergency Responses. So trying to create a situation where if you call 911 and it's not a criminal thing, how do we get you a response that will be more appropriate for your situation? Our team's listed up there. It's the city, the county, Lawrence Douglas County Fire Medical, Lawrence Douglas County Emergency Communications, PD, Burt Nash headquarters, Kansas headquarters. And we meet regularly with we have a fellow assigned to us. This is someone who's with the Government Performance Lab full time. And her name is Ian Mai, and she meets with us weekly to go over things, to try and help us get to where we need to be. And if you want to go to the next one there, Bob, it kind of outlines what it is. So we were approved for 1 year of technical assistance and research. This is all provided to our county at no cost. It's funded philanthropically. And these people are, I've been really impressed so far. These are like really smart people. They're very task oriented, which is a benefit for me because I tend to not be so task oriented. So I need somebody to keep me on track. But this kind of talks about the issue. 911 calls related to quality of life and other nonviolent incidents that require a time-sensitive response, but are better suited for unarmed responders. The national call to action for jurisdictions to move away from police as the de facto response. And then their model is the alternative dispatch models, diverting those calls to community-based health-centered response teams. One of the things that I think really helped us, and one of the things they were impressed with, was the amount of capacity we have in Douglas County. We've got a lot of these systems in place that a lot of communities aren't even doing yet. So mental health response, homeless outreach, and those things. So that was one of the things that they were impressed with on ours. Did you stop sharing, Bob?
I did. Did
Okay.
you want to? Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I was going to show them all the cohort cities from throughout the country. It's a very impressive list with that next slide there. So these are the other, the 23, 24 cohorts. So once a month, we'll have a call with all of these cohorts where we all talk about what's working, what's not working in our jurisdictions. And I don't know how familiar you are with populations of all those groups, but we are one of the smallest cohorts. I think Amherst, Massachusetts is the only one smaller than we are. So a lot of places with a lot more complex issues than we have, but still very similar. And that's one of the values of this program is they have a lot of expertise dealing with the things that we are having to deal with. And we'll be able to problem solve with them. And then also with our cohort partners to be able to get the best outcomes for our community. Our first deliverable is we worked through several scoping sessions and so, oh yeah.
Bob, you can stop sharing your screen.
So we went through our weekly meetings were basically a scoping thing. So think of a consultant. We've all worked with consultants and they were listening to us and trying to figure out what's the best place to start in Douglas County. And so one of the things that that we talked about is it scroll, Katie? Oh, okay. So the scoping process that we looked at was dealing with cross-team communication, supporting dispatch to send the appropriate responses and making efficient use of staff resources by right sizing and volume call volume. And so this is the challenge they identified. Our crisis response system has expanded rapidly in the last 18 months. And the creation of new alternative response programs is ongoing with fire, it's mobile integrated health. We just brought mental health response teams on last fall. At the center of the system is our emergency communications center, which dispatches calls to alternative emergent response programs, either directly or through 988. So the 3-month project proposal that GPL has given us is to work with Lawrence Douglas County Crisis Response System stakeholders to create a clear and simple but sufficiently detailed call decision tree for use by call takers and dispatchers in the emergency communications center. So the thinking here is create that solid foundation for people that enter the system, and then that will help us as we build out our other deliverables throughout this project. The deliverable is the call decision tree, obviously for the emergency communications center, call takers and dispatchers, clearly identifying which alternative response team is appropriate and available for a call. So there you see some of those. The stakeholders are listed, the value add is there and the needs are there. Again, this is an example of the professionalism of support we're getting from this group. This is what they gave us for that first deliverable. And then they've got the draft decision tree timeline. So we've got all of these weekly goals that we're going to be meeting, and they've got the assignments out to everyone. And so very, very detail oriented. And by October 30th, we're hoping for that decision tree to go live. And then this is the last thing they gave us, and that is our key questions to think about as a project team. And again, just an example of what they provide for us. And then there's the dependencies they identified. How long will it take to get all that information? Who else needs to be involved other than those already in the room, and getting a hold of some of those other stakeholders, and then meeting availability of those as well. There's points of contact, so they confirmed all of those. And again, it's been really, really exciting work so far. Let's see, I will stop sharing now. So exciting work. I think we're going to see some really great outcomes with it. And it wouldn't be possible without all of the cooperation of everyone that we have here in Douglas County. When I got this notification in an email, and the deadline was a week and a half away. And I went to all the people that I thought would be involved in this, and every single person said, yes, we'll do it. What do you need from us? And it was with that, energy, with that excitement, with that spirit of cooperation that we got approved, and working through this. Our term will be over next summer, June, July timeframe. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us, but I think we've got all the pieces in place to be able to make it a successful outcome. So thank you.
Thanks, Bob and Chief Lockhart. Does anybody on the council have questions for Bob or the chief? I'm going to have Marielle go first, and then I'll have you go next. Mario?
You, thank you both, Chief and Bob. This is first a comment, just really exciting to have resources in the community. I think that's huge. So in saying that, I kind of have a twofold question. First, how can this council and community members be good stewards of getting this information out into the community, especially championing things like 998 and our different triages to get folks alternatives if they're in crisis? I really am interested to hear how we can communicate that better back to our community, especially for those who, may not be able to be in listening to these meetings or be, a part of the groups. And then my follow-up question to that is a little bit around accessibility and around folks whose primary language is not English, and how we're approaching those folks who are experiencing either mental health crisis or other crises who may have a barrier of English, and how that works when utilizing 988, and if it's similar to the process of a 911 call, and how we're, working with those types of communities who, may have that language barrier, may have some other associated concerns, documentation, things like that, that may prevent them from utilizing these services.
Oh yeah, I'm going to take a crack at the second question first, if that's okay. Because it's a great question, and I think it's something that we are making progress on, and we still need to keep moving the ball, I guess. So I'll give you a couple of examples. We've shared that there's a resource called My Strength, right? For example, that's free and available to everybody in Douglas County, and there's a Spanish language version of that. I want to check back and get back to you on this, but I believe, because I want to find out the details. I can't see if Patrick Schmitz is at the table or not, but I believe that the TRC staff have some cross training in Spanish as well as English. So I think this is we'll get back to you on some specific examples of how that plays itself out. I don't want to say something is happening and then find out that I misspeak, but I know that it's very much a requirement through things like CARF accreditation and what KDADS expects in a crisis center in a crisis system. On the first question, and Chief, please feel free to jump in also, but I think this presentation, the presentations we made last week to the City Commission, the County Commission, we want to start to bring some opportunities for the community to learn forward and to share resources like the video that you saw, print materials, things that you can put on your refrigerator that have these simple ways that you access the crisis system, because it is a pretty simple system. So if you know that 988 is something you need to remember, if you know the local number is 841-2345, if you start with the call there, they can take it from there. Dr. Houston has shared with folks, how do I know whether I should go to the TRC or the emergency room? He said, if you don't feel like this is a life-threatening emergency, come to the TRC and we'll take it from here. Community needs to know that the TRC is open 7 days a week. It's open 8 to 8 Monday through Friday. You can walk in the front door. It's open 12 to 4 Monday or Saturday and Sunday. You can walk through the front door. So I think it's going to be taking these tools that we're putting together and everybody take a responsibility to share the same tools and to share the same messaging so that people can realize the benefit of these significant resources that are coming online. We have an event coming up on October 19th and 20th at Lawrence Arts Center, where we're bringing in a speaker and a storyteller to talk about finding resilience in the face of adversity. And we'll do what we've done in the past, which is having tabling from all of our behavioral health partners. Bert Nash is doing this with their behavioral health. I'm going to forget what the official title is, but getting these resources in front of people at community gatherings, getting them into the hands of the folks that are driving the Libby truck or the Dottie truck. Sorry, Libby's the app. Just Foods. So in other words, getting the resources in people's hands so they know how to access the system, but the system is getting simpler to access. Our challenge is making sure that we can provide timely access. And that continues to be a challenge. It's less worser. It needs to be more better. But we finally have the tools in place that we ought to be able to get better in an ongoing way.
You, Suzanne?
So 2 short comments and then a question concerning the TRC. Since it opened in in April, I should say, of this year, I just want to let this group know that we have seen a significant decline in the filings of care and treatment proceedings, which is huge for us because we're not even seeing them in our office. And so this is anecdotal, but clearly I think the intervention of the TRC has really helped. And certainly that means that we have folks who are not going to OSH. We're not having to, sheriff's not having to transport them out there. So we're saving a lot of resources and keeping these folks from being in the quote criminal justice system. So thank you for that. We're seeing a lot of that. And I mentioned it to Sarah when we had our meeting last couple of weeks ago. Well, of course, we collect data. We'll have, of course, numbers annually, but what we're seeing right now is a huge decline in those petitions being filed. I think there was a period of like 6 weeks where there wasn't a single one that was filed. So that's awesome news. The second point I'd make is that I am so excited about what law enforcement's doing in this space. And thank you, Chief Lockhart, for taking the leadership on this. We have placed a lot of unfair burden on our law enforcement agencies to be responding to what are mental health issues. And then what happens there is we end up with, a situation that can escalate to criminal conduct, which we just don't want to see in the DA's office. So this initiative being led by the chief of police here says a lot about our community. And I'm grateful because I think that our office is going to see the benefit of that. And the last question the last point I want to make is really a question of curiosity to me. My understanding is that this project goes on for a year, and then is there going to be a plan and data so that will help inform what we're seeing, what you've done over the year and all the tangibles so that when you're done with this program, we can review it and it'll help inform our prosecution priorities, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and you could see from the work scope of work with the deliverable for the first deliverable, they're all about data collection, making sure the work plans were laid out really well. They have a lot of experience doing this in a lot of other places. So I'm really excited that we'll have something that our county commission, our city commission, and our CJCC can take a look at. And what I'm hoping you all see is how much better we're doing. Bob talked about it being more better. I think we're going to see some huge results. We're doing great work. And I think coordinating all of that will only make us better. And I hope at the end of this time that we're the model cohort for other cohorts in the country, because some of the places aren't even doing the things that we're doing, and we're already doing those. So I think it'll be really exciting work. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I just want to throw out one other piece of data because when we look at, there was a lot of work that was done before TRC was open. And a lot of investment in bringing care coordination online, having peers in the emergency room. There were things we tried in the emergency room, in anticipation of the TRC becoming the right place for people to go. There's been a significant decline in the number of behavioral health crisis cases at the emergency department over the last 4 years. And if you look at it, I know that it's at least 22%. I don't have the number in front of me, but there's about 22% fewer people who walked into the emergency room in 2022 than when we started doing this work together in 2018, 2019. So that's a good baseline benchmark now to measure what the impact is, to District Attorney Valdez's point of moving forward. My point is we put a lot of baseline data in place through collaboration. And that's going to give us, I think, the points of reference that we need to make sure that we're still making progress. And if we're not, to understand where the hiccups are in the system. So there's just been a tremendous amount of work that we don't kind of see sometimes in terms of our data infrastructure. And so we have a lot more data. Now, if we can get some help from the experts to synthesize and tell us what the data means, I think we're going to be able to continue to move forward and make progress.
Thank you both. I assume that these documents, slides, everything will be on the CJCC website after this meeting. So if anybody's interested in looking at them, they'll be out there for you to look at. Do we have any more questions from the council? Yeah.
Just one other thing, sent Katie, there's an article from NACO, from the Familiar Faces work that we've done in conjunction with Douglas County. We actually hosted one of the NACO Familiar Faces site visits in April. So I put an article there because it demonstrates how we're collaborating with Johnson County through the shared use of My Resource Connection and learning from a community just down the road and vice versa as to how to really get results in impacting these familiar faces.
Fantastic. I'm going to turn it over to Katie to introduce our next guest.
Thank you, Bob and Chief Lockhart, for that. Our next item is we have some presenters from Justice Management Institute. So if you guys remember last month, we presented the idea of having the Justice Management Institute complete a assessment of our CJCC against standards and essential elements that have been identified as best practice for groups like ours. And so we have executed that contract and have very quickly been able to start working on that process with them. So we have two of their staff with us today. So we have Tom Eberly, who is a program director with Justice Management Institute, and Christy Danford, who is a senior advisor with JMI. And both of you all, Christy, I'm not sure if you want to be able to share your screen. I'm going to turn this over to both of them to walk us through kind of what the process of what this assessment process looks like, and what expectations and such of you all that they may have.
Well, I just want to jump in and say good afternoon, everyone. I am Tom Eberly with the Justice Management Institute, and as Katie mentioned, I'm a program director for the Institute. We're very excited to be coming to Douglas County to assist with the assessment of your CJCC, as we were invited by the county manager's office. And the Justice Management Institute is a nonprofit that's based in Arlington, Virginia, but incorporated in Denver, Colorado. We've been around for almost 30 some years, and we were founded by Barry Mahoney, who is widely considered as the father of modern pretrial services. We really specialize in offering jurisdictions technical assistance in any kind of issues that they're encountering with their criminal justice system. And we specialize by working closely with the jurisdictions and coming up with solutions with the jurisdictions and what's best for your particular location. And we've done this in more than 400 different counties. I find it very interesting, the conversation that we just heard, because we founded the National Network of Criminal Justice Coordinating Councils. And this brings together 40 high-performing, high-functioning CJCCs from across the country. And these jurisdictions, as part of members of our network, were actually the original members of the data-driven model that the White House was promoting back in 2017. And they became the foundation for a lot of the work that you just were presented with. And so we're very excited to have Douglas County as one of the members. And we just see so much good work coming from this. And it's really given us an opportunity to get a real strong understanding of how CJCCs operate. And in the past 2 years, we've partnered with the National Institute of Corrections and produced several publications. Those publications include a national survey on CJCCs from across the country. It also includes developing national standards for CJCCs. another publication, which we call the Essential Elements of CJCCs. And so we're very, very much involved in the whole concept of CJCCs and the value that they provide jurisdictions. So just to tell you a little bit about the project team that's going to be working with you all. Again, Tom Everly with the Justice Management Institute. I've been with JMI for 8 years. And prior to joining JMI, I was the criminal justice coordinator in 3 different locations. So I've been working in CJCCs all my life. I also worked for the Institute for Law and Policy Planning, where I would go around to different locations and help jurisdictions establish CJCCs. So it's just been a passion of mine for a very long time. And then joining me from JMI is Amy Wickman, who's unfortunately in South Dakota today and unable to join us. But she's also a co-coordinator of the National Network of CJCCs and was very instrumental in developing the documents that I mentioned earlier. As was the other person I'd like to introduce to you, and that's Christy Danford. Christy was a subject matter expert on the development of the national standards. And I'm going to turn it over to Christy and let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here and actually really excited I got to listen in on the earlier part of your meeting because it sounds like you have your hands full and have been making really good progress for your community. I'm happy to be here. My background is sort of been a different set of roles around the criminal justice system for the past 20 plus years, from line, probation and parole to state level work in Connecticut, where there's a sort of a nice, small, tidy state where things are unified and a lot of work towards the implementation of different evidence-based practices, to working nationally with the Crime and Justice Institute. And then most recently, I started and managed the Charleston County CJCC. And I'm happy to be here to kind of continue this work and see how we can be of service to you all and help really make sure, which sounds like you're already well on the way, optimizing your CJCC for the benefits of your community. I'm just going to kind of go through very briefly what you can expect from the project that as we've laid it out. We've got a couple of main objectives. One is to assess the purpose and structure of your CJCC and sort of doing that within context of the national standards to align with those best practices. And two, to collaborate with you all on the structure and your bylaws. I know you have them from back, I believe it's like in 2016. So we'll just kind of see how things are now and where and how you might want to tweak those as you move forward. We'll do this in a couple stages over the next 7 months, from kind of getting started to working with each of you, both quantitatively with survey data as well as qualitatively having one-on-one interviews with you to kind of get your different insights and perspectives. And then getting into a deliverable, which will be an actual report with recommendations that you can take with it what you think are the quick wins and the farther reaches, wherever it suits you guys best. And then we'll have some of that time for the bylaw structure. So within each of these phases, there's different subtasks. This is where we are now, was in the initiation phase. So we're kind of working through, hopefully hear more from you all on your timeline. I like to make things work for you when you can. It looks like you have a lot going on. So we want to kind of set up those interviews and those surveys at a time that's going to get the best response. We're working with Katie and any other information you all have so we can kind of understand the historical context and the different work that you've already done, as well as today, just really kicking it off with you. The next stage will be sort of getting into the nitty-gritty with the surveys and the interviews. I'm really grateful all of your meetings are on YouTube, so it's been helpful. I've already seen 1 or 2, so I appreciate that. It does really help give us a feel for not only the attendance you all have, but the passion and the amount of commitment that is easily seen in a lot of these videos. So thank you for that. And then the report itself will be a bit of an iterative process. We're going to go through it, draft it, and we'll kind of go back and forth a little bit and come out there and sort of go through the recommendations. And again, want to make sure that you have this deliverable document that is going to help you as you continue to progress and advance as a CJCC. The last phase is really kind of working with a group to update your bylaws, however you all determine is necessary, and bring it back to the full body for approval. So that's basically it in a gist. As we go forward, the next couple of steps are going to be just kind of laying out the timeline, continuing to go over any documents that are pertinent and relevant that you want us to review, and then really, getting into the more individualized feedback from your surveys and your interviews. So I'm going to pull down the share and just sort of take a pause. If you guys have questions, comments, concerns, throw it at us, anything.
I have one little question. Are you going to be sharing the best practice standards for CJCCs with this group? Like before the interviews, or at what point will we see what's considered best practice?
Do you want to take that?
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to share the two publications that came out this year. I mentioned there's national standards for CJCCs and the essential elements for CJCCs. And I think it'd be really helpful for everyone to get a chance to at least glance at those documents. You actually, in the essential elements document, you'll see the tool that we'll be using to conduct the assessment. And I just think having that framework will be very helpful in terms of having probably a better conversation, more meaningful conversation with each of you. So we'll get that out to you quickly.
And if you are interested, I'd recommend start with the essential elements. They're less overwhelming, and you can kind of get the skinny very quickly from it.
And I have those, Tom and Christy. I can share them with folks too.
Okay, great.
The only thing I'd add, and I love it when I can pretend like I'm the old person in the room who's been here forever. But I was here when we created the CJCC in Douglas County, and I think sometimes we think we're the first people to ever do anything, that we kind of invent stuff in Lawrence and Douglas County, and we kind of make it our own. It's a community where we really like to have things that sort of work specifically for this community. And I think that's right, but I'm really excited for us to have some conversation about how these councils fit into work that's happening at a state, regional, and national level, and how they can work most effectively. So I'm hopeful that we keep our minds open to maybe doing things a little bit differently if that's what the information comes back with, to make sure that we're as effective as possible. So I'm really excited to have you guys on board.
Well, thank you very much. I just want to share with you that the standards were developed kind of as the model way that a CJCC should operate. And we've, like I said, we like to work with jurisdictions, get to know you, and we will create a model CJCCC that works best for your jurisdiction and try to get you as close as possible to the standards. We're just want to be very respectful that every place is different. And I kind of want to segue a little bit into what you should be looking for next, because almost immediately we'd like to start setting up interviews. That can take quite a bit of time. Each interview will last about 45 minutes. And it's really just to get your perspective on the CJCC, on the criminal justice system, and where you think there are opportunities to do things better. And all this, all these interviews will be done in confidence. And then we will, report back in general terms of things that we heard, the common themes that we've heard. And then accompanying the interviews is a survey that we're going to be sending out. And this survey will take probably 5-10 minutes at the most. And it just kind of quantifies some of the feedback that we want to get from you, so that we have the qualitative and quantitative that Christy mentioned. And it really comes nicely together in the assessment. And then ultimately the recommendations that we share with you, the intention is that almost all of them can be accomplished in 1 year. And that's, building a structure and a working council for you that is very achievable.
Thank you very much, Christine Thomas. Are we ready to move on to the next agenda item?
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
guys.
you. We want to talk about topics for the November meeting. Do we have any suggestions or requests for the meeting in November?
I have some, but I'll hear from you all first. One of the things that I had talked with Jill and Sarah about a few months ago was I'm going to get their position wrong, but having Stuart Little and Mallory Lutz from Little Government Relations, they're the not lobbyists, but they're the group that helps us form the legislative statement for the county, and they kind of keep a good eye and ear out in Topeka with upcoming issues with the legislature. And we have an opportunity. We've touched base with them about whether it might be possible for them to, if you all are interested, to come to the November meeting to share what they know about things that are coming up for the legislature next year. It would also be an opportunity for you all to share if there's questions or things that y'all are interested in having them kind of take back to Topeka. That is one option that I wanted to throw out there, because we will probably need to make sure we get on their calendar if that's something that you all are interested in. And then the other one, I'm not sure if we will be ready, Judge McCabery, in November to potentially talk a little bit more about failure to appears. But if we are ready, that was the other agenda item that we're aiming for.
We'll work towards that.
Do you all have feedback about having Little Government Relations here? Because we actually have a meeting with them later this week. So if that is something that I see a lot of head nods,
Yeah, I think that's a
What you think of
great
that?
idea. The other one I'd be interested in, based upon some of the conversation today, is maybe a November update from the TLC, those 6 months in and impacts. I mean, maybe it's too early for the great data, but at least a short update would be good. I think they're making a difference as far as I can tell, but data would be good.
We could do that pretty easily. We're preparing, we're a presentation in November for the county commission on 6 months in, so I think it'll be
Okay.
great. Yeah.
Easy enough.
And I would say on Little Government Relations, they were super instrumental in helping us increase our funding with KDADs for the TRC and have pretty good understanding of how some of those things might relate. So I think it'd be interesting to get their kind of feedback of what's moving behind the scenes in the legislature, and if there are things with criminal justice that we can advance in advance of our platforms for both the city and the county, and as other cities are putting together their legislative platforms.
I'd be in favor of having the local government lobbyist also talk about what they're thinking about in the criminal justice space, obviously, because we have our lobby with the Kansas County and District Attorneys Association. They'll be coming up with their agenda, and I kind of want to see if there's any sort of overlap and anything of sort of concern, not only from a prosecutorial perspective, but certainly from a sort of general government perspective.
Bob has his hand raised.
Yeah, just a thought in that regard, Katie, which is that we've been having some conversations through this Familiar Faces work, and also some things navigating difficult cases in the community, that there are some places at the state level where things slow down to a screeching halt, right? And so the issue of guardianship and how to have a speedier process to get somebody a guardian is, an issue and a question. Placement in long-term placement in residential nursing homes. There are some pieces of the system that might benefit from an update from Stuart and Mallory on kind of the status of state level requirements for those things. I don't know if that fits or not, but I think we've been having some conversation about that and competency, for example, there are some issues where things slow down at the state, which make it very difficult for us to do things in a timely way locally.
Those are great suggestions. Okay, you're going to talk about next year's meeting schedule?
Yeah, I wanted to kind of revisit and go ahead and get time blocked out on folks' calendars for meetings for next year. I wanted to check in first. So this year we switched away from meeting every month for this group. So as we think about moving into 2024, want to check in to see how people feel about that meeting schedule versus every month. And does every other month still feel okay for folks? Okay. The next thing is, so we would meet in November. And then do we want to stick to kind of the odd months? So if we started in November, just continue to January, March, etc. next year? Or do y'all want to switch and we'll be weird like we have the last couple times, switching to even months? Do folks have a preference? And I know Lori from DECA and Patrick Schmitz weren't able to hop on today, but I have touched base with them. The odd months work better for Lori. Patrick is kind of open both ways. So.
Works. I know like July's been an issue, but I think I may try to move the county commission meeting after CJCC anyway. So I don't think we should schedule around that.
And Commissioner Reed is also, she is listening. We're not able to move her to the panel, but she has been texting and odds works best for her as well. So if odd is good for folks, then okay, I will go ahead and send out those, get those scheduled and sent out for folks for next year to go ahead and get that time scheduled. We will have at some point, just to put on people's radars, this room is going to be under construction at some point to accommodate 5 commissioners for 2025. So when we have that construction, we'll have to touch base about our alternative meeting space.
I do think, yeah, I think county commission is probably going to be moving completely off-site while the construction happens. So we may want to see if we can borrow some space in the law enforcement center or something like that. And since a lot of folks are downtown, but I don't have an exact schedule on that yet.
We can certainly try City Hall as well.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, City Hall would be great.
Oh, come down there. Okay.
That's true too. Oh, thank you. That'd be a great idea.
What was the other one?
To add Astor Room and Planning and Development Services. It's in Spring Hill Suites. So, or now the annex or whatever we call it.
So we'll try to give folks an update before we have to switch that. Once we know better when the time schedule is for this room being out of commission, we'll touch base with you all about making those arrangements.
Thank you, everyone. This is our opportunity for public comment. Do we have anybody on the phone, online
Open discussion.
for discussion?
Yeah,
Comments?
for a couple the members.
Oh, yeah.
Judge McCabery?
Okay. Do we have any discussion items that anybody wants to bring up from the board, from the commission?
I have an invitation to extend to anybody here in the room, anybody watching this online on Thursday. No, tomorrow,
Yeah.
September 13th. The court, in collaboration with the Douglas County Bar Association and our local Judge Hugh Means of Court, is sponsoring a public reading of the U.S. Constitution. And if you show up and sign up, the odds are very strong that you can be assigned a portion of the Constitution to read along with everyone else. We have a number of people, attorneys, local elected officials, I'm encouraging just citizens or anyone else who wants to participate to join us for that. It's the 236th anniversary of our Constitution being initially adopted or passed, I should say. It wasn't ratified until a year later, but so you're invited.
Thank you for that.
We'll send
It's
out,
at the courthouse in Division 6. So it's on the first floor. There'll be a registration table starting at 9:30 and then the reading starts at 10. It'll also be broadcast on the court's YouTube channel.
Judge?
Any other discussion or invitations? Greg?
I just wanted to share with the commission that we started our Lights On program last week, where we, instead of giving you a ticket for a tail light or headlight being out, you now get a voucher that's good for up to $250 to have that light fixed. And those of you that are car people will wonder, how can it cost $250 to have a light fixed? I just had to do them in my Yukon, and you've got to take the fender apart and all kinds of stuff to do it. They're really hard to get to now. It was fully funded through a generous donation from a member of our community to our Blue Santa program, which is a nonprofit that's run through the Lawrence Police Department. And we started kind of soft rolling it out a few months ago, just kind of get all the bugs worked out. And so we had our official complete rollout and announcement last week. There are still opportunities for car repair businesses to become part of it. If you go to our Facebook page, you can get the details there. Initially, we had 3 that were part of it, and that was only because they have to be vetted through the Lights On program. It's a national program that's run out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. We are now the only agency in the state of Kansas that's doing it, so we're very proud of that fact, and also proud of the fact this is one of the things that Justice Matters really pushed for. The Vera report identified that, and then also this group has really advocated for that as well. So we're really happy to be able to bring that to our community. They asked for it and wanted it, and so we were able to finally get that one done. So wanted to share that with all of you.
Congratulations. That's exciting news. Do we have any other discussion comments? Seeing none, do we have any public comments?
Yes, you
Robin.
have one person I will move over. Rick Kagan.
Hi, Rick. You're welcome to comment. Rick, you're muted. Did you want to make a comment?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Sorry about that. I've got a couple of comments. I'll be as brief as possible. The first thing is about tobacco. I want to just point out that nicotine is the most common form of addiction, and tobacco cessation is a factor which supports recovery from both mental illness and other substance use. And the tobacco-free living group of Live Well Douglas County, of which I'm a member, is in the process of meeting with all of the behavioral health partners in the county to assess their level of engagement with treatment for tobacco dependence. And because people with mental illness and substance use issues are overrepresented in the justice population, it's important that in the jail and community corrections and in our specialty courts that we focus on identifying tobacco and vape users and provide referrals for treatment and otherwise facilitate treatment for tobacco dependence. So just want to say that we're available for a deeper dive on these issues and would appreciate the support of the CJCC in this regard. So the second comment really is about not hearing much in this meeting or the last recent meetings about the launch of work groups. Commitments were made to follow through on the Vera recommendations, and I hear some passing references to them, but I'm not hearing anything about the formation and launch of at least 2 work groups, one related to FTA and the other to probation violations. And, what we've heard from the county previously was that you had a lot of sorting out to do and the wheels of the bureaucracy are turning slowly. But I think it's been too long and we need to be more transparent in the CJCC about our intentions. And by all means, include some public members on these work groups in the kind of formational deliberations around establishing the charters for these groups. I think it's wrong to wait until you have all your ducks lined up and then invite some of us in to be a part of the conversation. We need to be a part of that conversation at the outset. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, do we have anything else for the good of the order today?
Katie, do we want to at least address that Rick's comment that both work groups have been formed and they're in the initial stages of putting information together, and there are community folks on the failure to appear group, and they're going to give a presentation in November. One of the work groups will give an update. So,
And I think we're still willing to accept people on the failure to appear work group. If somebody wanted to volunteer, they could certainly talk to Katie or me. And so.
Thank you. Do we have anything else for the good of the order today? I don't see anybody saying anything. So seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. The next meeting of the CJCC will be on November 14th, 2023. Thank you, everyone.